I'm Scott Al Miller. This is my life living in León, Nicaragua. We've had a bit of discussion on the expat forums recently, and this comes up from time to time, that yet another very prominent business, a expat-owned tourism business in San Juan del Sur, has failed. And by failed, we mean gone up for sale. They're giving up on trying to run the place themselves, which is, from a business perspective, a very important indication of failure to some degree. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means, what you need to watch out for, and what trends we see going on, because this is important for people who are viewing different areas and trying to understand how they work and what opportunities exist and so forth. And there's a lot of people who are always just dead set on having a business here in Nicaragua and often are going to be convinced that buying an existing one might be a great idea. So we're going to talk about that right after the bump. It's often feeling like a great idea. You find a business that is already established and you may want to buy that business. Now, a lot of this comes from in the United States. We deal a lot with stocks and publicly traded companies. And so the idea of investing in a pre-existing business is a very logical, very normal one. And of course, many businesses come with a lot of their own equity, right? They may have shares, not shares, but they may have cash in the bank. They may have furniture. They may have a property. They may have customers, may have any number of things. And so buying one that already exists, you may spend a certain amount of money and get a pre-built business with all the accoutrements ready to go. And that's a decent idea. But I've been a business consultant for close to 30 years. And one of the things we always say is if you're buying a business, you need to make sure that what you're buying, you're actually getting. And the idea of buying a pre-existing business, by and large, is a really horrible one. So I'm not going to get deep into the details of general business mechanisms here, but this is a really important one because a lot of people are looking at getting into business for the very first time when they're coming to a new country, Nicaragua in this example. And when doing so, it's very easy to believe that buying a pre-existing business is something like buying magic money. Now, if you were to buy shares in a big company in the United States, right, you're used to this mechanic where maybe you're looking at Microsoft or Exxon Mobil, and you say, well, I have, I don't know, $100,000, and I could put it into there, and I'm buying a piece of this pre-existing business, and then that business is essentially guaranteed to pay you a certain amount that next month. And it doesn't matter whether it's a tech company or a power company or Disney, someone making movies, or like they all have this like general, like you've seen how they've performed over time. They're probably going to keep performing relatively similarly, right? You do know that certain industries go up and down, but basically you're buying into this piece of a business and it's just, you're getting that piece of that business. It's not going to go anywhere or anything like that. But when you start dealing with small businesses, often those businesses are nothing but the people who work there. So if you're talking about, so I'll use the example. One of my friends wanted to buy a sandwich shop long ago, and the owner was, I've used this as an example, but it's been a while. The owner was selling the place, asking for like $80,000 for his little middle of nowhere country sandwich shop. And my friend who worked there making minimum wage was like, wow, if I owned this shop, I would be the owner, right? I'd make all the money that the owner is making and so forth. But there's some things that are missing. One, she didn't know that the owner was making any money from the sandwich shop. And I think the answer was she was not. Why would she be selling it if she was making good money? If the sandwich shop was actually profitable, she would just hold on to it and keep making that money in 9 out of 10 cases. There are exceptions where you would sell a business because you are quite old and definitely need to retire and can't do any oversight of it whatsoever anymore. So that's a possibility. Or maybe you're in desperate need of a lot of cash quickly and you're willing to give up your long-term investment. But generally you're selling a business either because it's not making any money, but you think you found someone who thinks that it is, or you know that it's making money today, but is very likely to not make money tomorrow. But one way or another, if you are making money, this is just general business. If you're making decent money at a business, you don't sell it because you're already in the best possible position. Once in a while, you're able to make money at a business and you're like, I know nothing about what I'm doing. I can't believe how stupid I am, but I'm still making a little bit of money. If I sell this to a smart person who understands this business, they're going to make way more than me. So since I've set them up, but they'll do all the work, they'll be willing to pay me more to get them started. Like that sounds weird, but that's like the one time that it kind of makes sense. Otherwise, you've already built the reputation. You've already done all these things. Why would you give that up? You wouldn't, right? So anytime someone's selling a business, should be a huge red flag. You need to go, whoa, this is all but a guarantee that they have failed. Even if you're retiring, in almost all cases, you're not going to sell it, right? If I'm going to sell my businesses, right, instead of passing them on to my kids, right, that tells you something. It means I don't have faith in them, or I'm cash strapped and I'm just desperate, right? Now, selling property is a little bit different. If you're selling land, it's like, well, I think this is a good time to sell the land. I've got buyers who are interested. That's different. But a business, you don't move just because it's not doing well, right? There's reasons to hold on to it because you want that money to keep coming in. So just very rare. So it should be a massive red flag anytime someone's selling a business, and especially once they're advertising that they're selling a business. That means they're willing to give up their reputation. That means they're announcing maybe we're going to go out of business, maybe things are going to change, things are not stable. You start making your customers question whether they should keep going to you, or not maybe that they should keep going to you, but they start assuming maybe you're going to be closed. So like for a restaurant, as an example, as a sandwich shop, if you're going to advertise that you're going to sell it, people stop going, oh, there's definitely this sandwich shop in this town. What they think is there used to be this sandwich shop. I wonder if it's still there. And the answer is normally no, right? People are used to businesses closing, especially small ones, all the time. So if you give them that mental space to think that it's probably closed, to them it is closed. You're going to lose customers. So you never advertise that you're looking to sell an active business until you are so desperate that you've exhausted all the other chances. You've exhausted the idea of running it yourself. That's not going to make enough money. You've exhausted your network of people who know you and trust you that would put in money. If they're not going to do it, now you have to go to trying to find, bank loans or your extended network of people. You're hoping you can talk into it. That's very unlikely to work. So you've lost all your options. Now you're at that point of, well, I'm just going to cast a net and hope that strangers fall for the idea of buying a business that pre-existed, right? So you're into this point of going for the desperate, going for the truly not prepared people, right? In most cases, right? Because no matter what you show, and I know everyone who has not done this has this feeling that you can look at a business, see how much it makes, and just buy income, right? But that makes no sense. That is completely illogical. It's not that it's impossible, but it's illogical, right? It's not that a person can't sell you a business that would make money. It's that why would they, right? Well, it's like going to any store and going, okay, I'm just going to buy this one item. They're not going to use this to advertise to me. They're not going to do anything. They're just going to sell this to me for less than they paid for it, right? It's not impossible. They're certainly physically capable of doing that. But why would you think that they would, right? I'm running a store. I'm here to make money, but I've decided that I'm actually going to do the exact opposite today. Just for fun, to help you out, I'm going to sell something. Now, if they're doing you a favor, and clearly doing you a favor, it's a little bit different. But if you're just normally going, this store sells everything below value, that's you've misunderstood value, right? That's just what's going on. So there's no reason that someone's gonna sell this. So in this situation, if you're seeing stuff advertised, you're in a really, really bad situation. So I'm talking to my friend. I'm like, okay, so she's not making this money that you think she's making. And two, she's doing it. She doesn't have this big debt that you're about to have. If you buy this place, at the time it was like $85,000. If you're going to go to a bank and borrow, first of all, no one's going to give you this money, so you're safe. But if you were to go to a bank and borrow $85,000 to buy this business, not the building, just the business that sells sandwiches, you're going to be $85,000 in debt that the current person is not, right? They're not making enough money to pay for this as it is. If you go borrow money, you're going to be taking on the interest payments on that and all of that's expenditure, and you're going to give that to her. That's not going into your business. That's going into her. You might get something. You're getting a few knives. You're getting a toaster oven, something, right? But nothing that you couldn't just replace for $1,000 or maybe $2,000, right? It's a sandwich shop in the country. And so she's going to get $85,000. So not only are you going to take on a business that you know nothing about? So you're going to go through all the learning curve that she's already done. You're going to take on risks that maybe you can't make it work. You're going to not have yourself as an employee, or you're probably going to work there, but you're going to be stuck working there. And all this stuff that she's not feeling is good enough to keep doing, you're going to do at a lesser position because you don't have her experience. And you don't have her reputation. You don't know how many contacts. Maybe she has really good contacts with like the meat vendor or the bread baker or whatever. Those are just the carniceria, the panaderia. You've got these. She may have connections. She may be getting discounts that you're not going to get. Maybe you'll get them, but you don't know that, right? You don't know how many personal connections she used to make this business do as well as it did. And when you buy it, you're going to have all of the problems that she did, plus probably more, plus you're going to pay her $85,000. So she's going to make this $85,000, and you have this additional debt that she didn't. If it's not working for her, it's going to not work for you by more than $85,000. Like, this is going to be bad, right? So it's really easy when you sit down and think about the different players, have some empathy instantly. You should say, whoa, there's no way something like this would work. And yet you see a ton of it. So what we see going on in San Juan del Sur, because tons of people do this when you're coming in as an expat, right? We talk about how expats are always vulnerable. You're restless. You're in this disconnected part of life. Buying a business often gives us a false sense of income that we just assume is going to magically happen in the future. That doesn't make sense. And it gives us this like anchor to a community and makes us feel like we're part of a community. And maybe that's true to some degree. And if you're willing to have a business and lose money, or have a business and not make money, that could be an interesting way to keep yourself busy and anchor to a community. Absolutely, that's a fine thing. Just make sure you're going into it realistically. We don't want people fooling themselves, and we certainly don't want people taking advantage of you. So we know that expats are in this position of being new to the market and being easily convinced that magic will happen. All that math of business from the States, you don't need that. From Canada, you don't need that. Here, you just throw in a few $1,000s and money just pours at you, right? We act like Nicaragua is the golden goose. We do this for most tropical locations, right? We imagine that there's so much money and all the locals just don't know to scoop it up off the beach, right? We actually seem to have this fantasy that money is just laying about everywhere, and we just have to go collect it, and we'll be not maybe super rich, but surprisingly wealthy simply by being in a really low-cost location where people can't find enough jobs or earn high enough wage. The two just don't make no sense. It's completely incongruous, and yet that's what people imagine. So because they're imagining this, mostly because they're still in vacation fantasy land, and because they're feeling disconnected from the anchors to life that they've had before, because they're in the process of moving or they just moved, they are very, very likely to fall for people trying to sell them homes and businesses. It is the perfect thing to go after the emotional state of a new expat. And as an expat, you should immediately be wary of these two things. Whatever you do as a new expat, don't buy homes and businesses, right? Rent until that feeling goes away. You have to give yourself enough time to get rid of those emotions and start becoming a smart, logical person again. Don't be the irrational new expat. We're all that, right? This isn't about you personally. All expats become very, very emotional and illogical when they are first at it. So just accept that that's going to happen and don't do this. Everybody who says, yes, but it's not going to happen to me, that's them saying it's happening to them. If someone says that to you, you should hear they're being emotional and illogical right now, all the time. It always happens. So what we're seeing in San Juan del Sur, which for those who don't know, this is the hot vacation, hot tourism, hot expat enclave village in the south of Nicaragua. Everybody always talks about it as, now this is relatively recent. When I was here in 2015, it is actually Granada was the hot spot and San Juan del Sur was up and coming. Since then, about 2017, that flipped. San Juan del Sur is the big thing. Now, most people only think of Nicaragua as San Juan del Sur, which is shocking because to most of us, it's basically not like part of the country. It's like our little tiny sliver of Costa Rica hanging out inside our borders, right? So it's a very different thing. We like to pick on San Juan del Sur. It's a nice place. It has a lot going for it. It has some unique things, but it is so overrun with expats. It is such a completely different experience than the rest of Nicaragua that you have to think of it as the other Nicaragua, if anything. So we often use it as a bellwether because it is by far the biggest traffic for tourists. It sees the swings up and down far before everyone else does. They could see an increase of 20 or 30% while the rest of us see maybe one extra person, right? They're large enough in their tourism traffic to have some amount of statistics going on, whereas the rest of us deal with individual people, right? Even in pretty big places like Leon, we just don't get statistic number of visitors. We're a very small country when it comes to tourism and expats, so that perspective is important. So San Juan del Sur is important for this reason. And when I was first shopping for places in San Juan del Sur in 2019 and all throughout 2020, actually, I was doing remote shopping for other people, not for myself, from about 2017 and 2018 and most of 2019. In 2019, I was on the ground there doing a bunch of work, not to really buy on the spot, but to make future plans. And then 2021, we were down there doing actual shopping, and I've been involved to some degree with the market ever since. And what we've seen is this massive decline. Even in 2021, people were touting how expensive everything was. And when you got on the ground, it was nothing of the sort. Everything was super cheap, falling down, terrible disrepair. It was an unbelievable situation. it has only been going down since then, and everyone is still pushing, oh, it's doing so great, so much stuff is happening, and there are some good things happening, for sure. There is development, there are some people moving in, but there's also people moving out. But importantly, one of the top bellwethers that we have, the indicators of market, is what's going on with the long-term businesses. These are the people who got in when times were good. They paid off their startup debt most likely years ago. They've learned the market. They know what they're doing. They have a really good view on things, and they know how it works. They've gotten their processes down. They've put in the time, right? So this is just naturally what happens. Your first year or two, you're just floundering in most any business, right? You got to learn the ropes. You got to learn the market. You got to learn your customers. You get things wrong, you adjust. So the places that have been around, especially many of these are 10 plus years, they've gotten the advantage of, they got in when it was super cheap, so they didn't have this high cost. They went through the fat years and they made money and they paid for themselves. And now when they're riding through more normal times, a little bit on the lean side, but mostly normal, then they're in the best possible position. They've developed a clientele. They've got a reputation. They're on Google Maps. They're on TripAdvisor. The people know their names automatically. You could not go for years and be like, hey, are you going down to San Juan Del Sur? You're going to eat at this place, drink at this place. What you doing, right? We know some of these places just instantly around the country. We know their names. Those people are in the best possible position. If you are investing today, you're looking at 10 years and very little chance of getting to the same position that they're in today, because they went through a time period that made it really advantageous for them. You're unlikely, could happen, but it's unlikely that the next 10 years will be quite as advantageous for you. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but they got the windfall, right? They got lucky when they bought. And those places today, what we're seeing and we have been seeing for the past bit is an increasing rate of failure. If you look at listings for San Juan del Sur, business after business after business, key businesses, anchor businesses in town are going up for sale. And of course, at crazy numbers. That's a separate thing, right? Businesses with no property, no value, bad reputations, or what we're hearing are bad reputations, right? I mention a place to someone and someone will be like, oh, I hate that place. I went one time, no interest in ever going back again. Oh my gosh, that's a big indicator, right? Would I want to buy that business and take on that bad reputation? Oh, that's one person, but this one particular one, I've asked many people and everyone has the exact same reaction, which is weird because for me, I thought it was a good place, right? But I haven't been in a little while. All these people are like, yeah, they were okay. I wouldn't go back. Whether it was terrible or just okay, it's not worth the money. I wouldn't go back again. And what do we find is that business is up for sale and they're asking some outrageous amounts of money, right? Like $95,000 to buy nothing but risk, nothing but bad reputation. You would want to change the name and rebrand and start over. All you're buying is a couple fridges and knives and plates. That's it. You want to change the signs. You want to change basically everything when you start, but you're going to spend $95,000 to do it. Even starting from scratch, you would be in a worse position than the person who currently owns it, and they're failed, right? They're selling it because they're not seeing it as making money. It was a bad investment for them, or they see it's a bad investment now. So they want to bail and get out, and they're willing to throw their reputation, which is already apparently bad, under the bus and make people think, oh, they're out of business or going out of business. I don't need to think about them anymore. We don't need to be promoting them. We don't need to be supporting them. It's already too late, right? We're just looking for the next sucker to come along and get in on something that has no chance of success, right? And it's not that a bar or a restaurant has no chance of success. It has an unbelievable uphill battle, but going into a place that's already failed under the best possible conditions and then trying to buy it for, say, $100,000, right? The person who had it and failed didn't have that burden of the $100,000. You do. So you're in so many ways a worse position than they are, and it failed for them. How could you possibly hope to overcome that deficit you'd be starting with? You can't. There's no chance, right? But this is the position we're seeing of so many businesses. They've given up on maintaining their reputations. They've given up on that mind share, and they're just advertising publicly that they're up for sale and they're going out of business. And person after person who has invested and put in long-term building of reputation, building of clientele, building of mind share, getting into the listings down in San Juan del Sur is looking to get out. We just see this a snowball effect as thing after thing closes or semi-closes or goes up for sale. And so this is an important thing to look at for a number of reasons. One, it gives you a general indicator across the country. Tourism is a difficult thing, even in the best case scenarios. Two, San Juan del Sur specifically seems to be being hit harder than other places. We don't see that same failure pace in other locations. We see it, but we don't see the same pace, right? That pace is not too surprising because they're so dependent on tourism. Whereas, for example, the number 2 beach, Las Bonitas, is far less dependent on tourism or international tourism. Most of its visitors are Nicaraguan, and things are doing more or less okay. Businesses that focus on Nicaraguans, thriving. Businesses that focus on foreigners, failing. So that's generally a trend. San Juan del Sur basically is all for foreigners, and we're seeing just across the board failure, right? At least that's what it appears like. So this is an important indicator when we're looking at what are your chances of having a successful tourism business. Well, you need to very carefully gauge when it comes to what are the people with the experience, what are the people with the perfect situation doing. They're giving up, right? So should you be investing in general, you need to be really cautious. You really need to understand what you're getting into. But as always, really key warning, never buy an existing business. Buying an existing building, fantastic, do that. But in this case, the building that they're in, which is where all the value is, not for sale. That you have to buy separately. You're only getting the rent. You still have to pay rent. You still have to pay the employees. You still have to pay all the vendors. You're not getting anything for the money. Everything you get with the money is stuff you have to burn down and start over because it's got bad reputation. So real important to think that in 2 different ways, right? 1, don't be buying existing businesses, and 2, be very, very careful as you analyze the market, because everybody who's out to sell something to you is going to tell you how great the market is doing and how booming it is, and the overall economy is. Nicaragua is thriving right now. But that doesn't mean that businesses for tourists run by expats are reaping any of those benefits or seeing that growth. That is not the case. They are a different market doing a different thing, and you are at a time period where, yes, there is some opportunity. And of course, we love to see people coming in and investing, but we want you to do it with your eyes open. We want you to do it using math and acting as business people and not being emotional expats and just setting your life savings on fire because you feel like you need some attachment to a place that's an artificial attachment and could actually do serious damage to your long-term ability to retire or to remain. We want to give you a rate of success. We want to make you a successful expat, not make you sorry that you tried something and wish someone had warned you against really obvious things that are easy to fall for, but also easy to avoid. Thank you for joining me. Like and subscribe. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can buy me a coffee. buymeacoffee.com/ScottLMiller. Pop it up on the screen. It's in the show notes. Just easy. Send me a couple coffees. It would be much appreciated. It helps make this show possible. We don't make any money from doing this show, so that really does make a big difference. We do have a lot of cameras and software and things we have to buy to do this, so I really appreciate that. You can get in the show notes to send in your questions. Also get in the comments. Just say hello or ask your questions down there. Really appreciate it. You can also support the show just by watching another episode. It makes a big difference. And I will see all of you tomorrow.